From WRAL News, this is Focal Point.
Why has this young woman spent so much of her life in foster care?
Just because mom's drug habits, I guess.
And why are so many black children in our state's foster care system?
An African-American child is about 3 or 4 times more likely to be reported to us by the public than a white child.
Is that because black children are more likely to live in poverty?
If it wasn't for the poverty, we wouldn't have a lot of these issues.
Issues like child abuse and neglect.
Often what we get in terms of reports are families where some level of substance abuse is at work.
Black children tend to stay in foster care longer than white children.
And all they want is someone to love them. They just want to be considered a part of a family, somewhere to belong.
Children get bounced from foster home to foster home.
They lose friends, they lose schoolmates, they lose teachers.
And sometimes they lose hope.
Somebody has to feed and clothe these kids. And if their parents aren't going to step up and do that, then as a society, we have to do that.
Some say if society doesn't do that, then it has a lot to lose too.
Every child who does not have a home is a threat to those kids who do.
When the Department of Social Services determines that a child is not safe in its own home due to neglect or abuse, it can take custody of that child and place the child in a temporary home with licensed foster parents. There are more than 11,000 children in foster care in North Carolina. In many counties, the vast majority are black. Our focal point, the disproportionate number of black children in foster care in our state and the impact it has on them and all of us.
Do both together. Okay, good.
The sweet sound of home.
You're on your way to being a great composer.
Michelle Thaxton has a home thanks to her foster parents, Michael and Renee Paris.
I think it's just cool that they took me in and kept me.
Michelle's journey began 18 years ago in one of Durham's toughest neighborhoods, where she lived with 3 siblings. Their father wasn't around.
He was in and out of prison, and in and out of drugs, and in and out of rehabs. He still is.
Their mother was addicted to crack.
The children were being neglected, and mom was not around, so the kids were placed into foster care.
Michelle was just 3 years old. She lived in foster homes until her paternal grandmother took her in at age 6. Michelle began to rebel.
And just lashing out at any and everybody who tried to help.
When she was 13, Michelle's grandmother kicked her out.
Why did she really take me in if, it was going to come to a point where it had to end? It was just, I was confused.
Michelle went back to her mother's apartment.
But of course, my mom wasn't around. She was still out doing, whatever she does. So my other grandma came to get me.
Michelle was reunited with her brothers and sisters.
So it was kind of a good thing in a way that I got to finally reunite with them for good. Well, what I thought was for good.
Her maternal grandmother had a stroke. Michelle and her brothers and sisters moved back into their mom's apartment.
It was like being with a stranger. I mean, it's like we really didn't even see her a lot because she was never there. So whenever she did come in, it just made you mad because she decides she's going to pop in whenever she wants to and become the mom again, and it was just stressful.
The older siblings took care of the younger ones.
But then, older brother, he got locked up, and my sister and my mom didn't get along, so she moved.
Michelle became the caretaker for her younger sisters and brother.
Get their clothes out at night and fix their hair at night, and, wake them up in the morning and, make sure to get something to eat while Mom was on the couch, not knowing what's going on.
Michelle left them alone at their school bus stop so she could make it to her school on time.
So I never knew if they were on the bus or not, so it was scary at times. It made it even more scarier because of all the gangs and shooting and, it was scary.
A tough life at home made for a tough time at school.
So my grades, suffered big time, and I barely passed the 9th grade, barely.
One night her mother and some of her friends headed out to a party, leaving a hot iron on a bed.
It was like 2 o'clock in the morning, and just the smell and the smoke just woke me up. So I jumped out the window and ran next door, called 911.
Friends from church took her in and connected her to the Parises.
I mean, she's just a happy-go-lucky kid, and you would never dream that she had all this baggage that she carried around.
Your mind has to see it first, think about it.
The Parises have been Michelle's foster parents for about 3 years.
It's been stable. It's not like I've been moving back and forth, you know, and it's someone that I can trust.
Next, why so many kids like Michelle are in our state's foster care system.
African American children are coming into foster care at an alarming rate.
You're watching Focal Point from WRAL News.
A closer look at the numbers reveals a disproportionate number of black children in foster care. The numbers also appear to be a barometer of other social ills that contribute to the problem.
You made it, good job.
Michelle is a wonderful young woman.
You want it?
She is also a statistic. Statewide, about 42% of the children in foster care are black, but blacks make up only about 26% of children in the general population. Social workers call that disproportionality. It's especially stark in some of our state's most populous counties. In Wake County, black children make up about 67% of children in foster care, but only about 24% of children in the general population. In Durham County, the ratio is 79% to 46%, and in Mecklenburg, it's about 69% to 35%. Poverty contributes to the disparity. Black children in our state are about twice as likely to have parents living in poverty than white children.
And their reality every day is trying to keep the water from being turned off, the power from being turned off, the car from being repossessed, what credit they might have being removed, keeping food and clothes in their family. That's the reality they wake up with every morning. And those pressures are very different than in other families.
Social workers say those pressures increase the chances of a parent abusing drugs or abusing their children.
Often what we get in terms of reports are families where some level of substance abuse is at work.
Black children in our state are also more likely than other children to live in single-parent homes.
And if there's a parent who is, for example, incapacitated by using drugs, if that's the child's only parent, that child's more likely to come into foster care than if there are two parents and another one who can take over.
So how are you feeling about things now?
Some social workers say many black parents are afraid to seek services that might help keep their families together and keep their children out of foster care.
Historically, the system has not been kind to poor families. And so families are real reluctant to seek out help because they don't know how they're going to be treated.
Black children often end up in the care of other relatives.
The African American community is already busy raising a lot of kids that we don't even know they're raising. And if the grandmother and the aunts and uncles are already burned out from trying to deal with this, they take themselves out of the picture as a resource.
Look on page 260.
That's what Michelle's grandmother did when she forced Michelle out at age 13. It helps explain why so many black children enter foster care at an older age than other children.
And in general, we have a much harder time finding permanent homes for older children in the system than we do for younger.
Wow!
Black children tend to stay in foster care much longer than white children, so they are more likely to get bounced from home to home.
Many of these children who have been in care and have gone from home to home are hurting. They have lost hope. They do not trust adults around them, and they do not want to form attachments because they've been disappointed.
It takes a long time to actually trust somebody because you never know if you're going to be there, you know, for 2 years or 5 months.
And that's the reality that a young person in foster care wakes up to every morning. And yet we expect them to be able to go to school and to perform well and to behave and not worry about the insecurity and the instability that comes with being in foster care.
Most children, even if they have been abused or neglected, love their parents. And so for every child, there is a sense of loss when they come into foster care.
National studies have shown that foster children who don't find permanent homes are more likely than other children to be high school dropouts, unemployed, on welfare, on drugs, or in prison. In many cases, they follow their parents' path.
And it's just a continuous vicious cycle. I mean, and we have to figure out a way how to break that.
You know, how does a beautiful baby get born today and 15 years from now he's, you know, in a gang holding a gun to your head? How does that happen? You know, somewhere along the way somebody didn't do their responsibility to that kid, and it's not the child's fault. It's our fault as a society.
So what can our society do to help those children?
Whenever we can help one, we help everybody.
You're watching Focal Point from WRAL News.
When it comes to children in foster care, the main goal of the social worker is to find them a permanent home, whether it's back with their birth parents, with relatives, or through adoption. They're even trying new programs to keep children out of foster care to begin with. But all of those challenges can be especially difficult for Black children.
We are going to see a family that I am working with.
Joyce Klein goes out into the community to help teach families how to be good parents, even under all the stress that poverty can bring.
Hello, how are you?
I'm fine.
It's called Intensive Family Preservation Services.
You can call me and I will come out and do whatever I need to do to help.
Since the services are free and provided in the home, parents don't need to worry about the cost or finding childcare and transportation.
If people have the skill set they need and they can safely discipline their children and get the behavior they want, they're very unlikely to be at risk of abusing their children, and therefore those children are likely to stay in the home.
Have you thought about what you need to be living on your own?
Durham is one of 69 counties using Intensive Family Preservation Services to help keep children out of foster care. But the program is voluntary, and many social workers say it's underfunded.
Children come into care through social services.
Like most counties, Durham is also looking for more foster families for children who must be removed from their homes.
We're always recruiting. We're always needing more foster families, and as I mentioned, particularly families willing to allow older kids in foster care to come into their home.
Go ahead, Davion. Swing, swing. You like that?
Right now, Durham County has 265 kids in foster care, but only 104 licensed foster homes.
So that means that we are utilizing some of the same foster homes over and over again.
That can cause foster parents to burn out and leave the system.
I would love to see, 265 licensed foster homes and only 104 kids. And you guys are going to be terrific foster parents, and you're going to open up your hearts and your homes to these kids.
Recruited foster parents go through 30 hours of training.
Ooh, all right.
After the training, Terrence and Bernadine Latta became foster parents for 6-month-old Davion. They adopted him a year and a half later.
And I think about Davion, I'm like, he could have been a statistic.
You ready?
The Lattas worry about other children who need permanent homes.
I'm afraid to say that they're going to end up statistics on the streets, on drugs, whatever bad thing could possibly happen, unless they have some good role models.
Keeping birth families connected.
But there are high hurdles that families must jump to become foster or adoptive parents. There's the training, background checks, and surprise home inspections. Birth parents aren't subject to such scrutiny and high standards.
Those are the challenges that scare most people away. But the reward of taking care of the kids so outweighs whatever little things you have to go through.
It is for families whose kids have been adopted, school-age children.
Ruth Amerson says the system is especially scary to Black families. Amerson runs the state's first nonprofit organization specifically established to help find adoptive homes for Black children.
Okay, bye-bye. Too many Black kids think that nobody wants them. They think because it's something wrong with them, not understanding that there are a host of families out there that would love to give a child a home if they were given proper opportunity and access to those children.
Get down on their level.
To recruit those foster and adoptive parents, Amerson says social service agencies should have hours that are more convenient for working families, should be friendlier in how they deal with them, and shouldn't discriminate against families of modest means.
Sometimes when families don't make a lot of money or they don't have a lot of education, a lot of agencies tend to select them out of the process.
Amerson's organization does not.
And we're looking for good enough families, not perfect families, but good enough families for these children.
When it comes to selecting parents, Amerson's organization is also colorblind. Social service agencies are supposed to be too.
If you can reach that child, if you can connect with that child, if you can attach to that child, and that child can see that you truly care for them, concerned about their welfare, you can make a difference. It doesn't matter what color the skin is.
We had a lot of different kids at our house, didn't we?
Becky Burmester has fostered more than 60 children of multiple races. She says white families fostering black children do face unique challenges.
I've had numerous black people come up to me and say, but you love them, and that's what matters. Loving them is very important, but you have to be comfortable in their skin and with their skin. What's your brother doing?
Burmester says white families must help keep black foster children connected to their culture and their community.
I tried, you didn't push me back.
For the Parises, that meant letting Michelle maintain a relationship with her family, including her birth mother. That's a new trend in foster care.
In the old days in child welfare, a social worker and the supervisor might make decisions in their office about what we should do. Our thought is if the family is involved in making the plan is much more likely to work for the family.
The plan is always unification in the beginning, but it just doesn't always work.
When it doesn't, trying to find relatives to care for the children is the next step. But those relatives may still need social services to retain legal custody of the children so they can get financial support as foster parents.
That need is more likely among African American families because more of them are living in poverty.
Does she go to school?
Ludwig says the state pays foster parents more than 3 times what it's willing to pay relatives to help care for children.
The other way of looking at it is you shouldn't pay strangers more to take care of children than you would pay relatives. And that's the way we suggest the state should look at it.
We even had to replace federal cuts to foster care families.
In his 2007-2008 budget, Governor Easley proposed funding to help cover educational and medical costs for foster children older than 18 and to replace lost federal funding for training social workers.
After all, we did commit to raise these children.
He also proposed a tax credit for families who adopt.
So many as favor passage will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no.
Representative Jeff Barnhart is an advocate for foster children and vice chair of a legislative committee that oversees foster care funding.
Having personally adopted children, my wife and I ourselves, I can tell you it's expensive. It doesn't matter where they come from, it's expensive.
That's why Barnhart supports the governor's proposals.
I think it's the right thing, and I'm glad to see that he's put it in there.
But many social workers say the state also needs to fund more alternatives to foster care, like kinship care and assisted guardianship, where relatives and friends can get legal custody of children and still get funding to care for them.
I am convinced that if we could do that, then we would turn disproportionality around, and also we wouldn't spend more money than we're now spending on foster care.
The sad reality is that America is rich. We are able to send folk all the way to the moon. It makes no sense that we cannot preserve and support families so they can be able to meet the needs of their children.
Which way do you want to go?
Next, the return on that investment.
She will succeed.
To learn more about the issues covered in this episode of Focal Point, visit WRAL.com and click on News, then Documentaries.
Both Durham and Wake counties are making progress when it comes to reducing the number of black children in foster care, thanks in part to early intervention programs that help support families. The message for our state is simple: pay now for that support, or pay a lot more later when abused and neglected children grow up and end up on welfare, in the courts, or in prison.
No, this is my ball. Oh.
Michelle Thaxton's older siblings have aged out of foster care. They have not done as well as she has. Her older brother spent the last 3 years in prison.
I think he was following Mom's footsteps, like big time.
To see that she has not gone down that same road should give a lot of other kids hope that you don't have to do that. You don't have to keep that cycle going. You can do something different with your life. And some kids you can't help. No matter how much you try, they just don't have enough faith in themselves. They've been so beaten down, that they never get that glimpse that there can be something more for me. But she had that, and so she's done remarkably well.
So, how many miles is he allowed?
Michelle's grades are good, She'll soon graduate from high school. She's been accepted to college, and she plans to go into nursing.
I would be shocked if 10 years from now she's not in a successful, loving marriage with a great career. I think she's got a very bright future. I think she's going to do well. And for us, it means that all those days that you want to throw up your hands and say, I don't want to do this anymore, you know, that it was worth it, and that in at least one life you were able to make a difference. And that's a good thing. That's a good way to go to sleep at night, to feel like you've changed one life.
Come on!
A change that helped Michelle break the old cycle and start a new one. She has already learned to give back the love she's waited so long to receive.
She's added a lot to our home. And I feel bad for her that she has been a foster child, but I'm so glad that we've had the opportunity to have a part of her life, because she's brought as much to our home, hopefully, as we've given to her.
It just makes me think of all the people who don't have, you know, the help, or whose life is still like mine was. You know, I'm just grateful.